Hello, and welcome to my first ever lore video. With this series, I intend to read straight from the book, nothing more, nothing less. This way you can get the most accurate lore possible. No lying, no making things up, just the truth. Pivotal events of the Horus Heresy. 000 M31. The Great Triumph at Ullanor. At the height of the Great Crusade, Horus, Primarch of the 16th Legion, is elevated to the rank of War Master, and the leader of all the Imperium's armies. With this act, the Emperor withdraws from the Great Crusade to return to Terra, the throne world of mankind, and his secretive great work. 0001 M31. The Council of Nikaea. After decades of controversy, the Emperor calls a Grand Council of the leaders of the Imperium at Nikaea. There he pronounces an edict which forbids the use of psychic powers by the military bodies of the Great Crusade. The council is perceived by many to be the trial of the sorcerers Primarch Magnus the Red, who returns to his homeworld of Prospero censored. 004 M31. The Serpent Lodge. Horus is struck down by a tainted blade while fighting to quell a rebellious uprising on Davon's moon. Mortally wounded, he is interred in the Serpent Lodge on Davin, where during a ruinous ritual of healing, Horus enters a pact with the Dark Powers. The Primarch that emerges from Davonite Lodge, subtly altered, and puts into motion long festering plans. 04 to 05 M31. The Burning of Prospero. Leman Russ, Primarch of the Space Wolves and the Emperor's executioner, is dispatched to Prospero to bring Magnus the Red to Terra to stand trial for his crimes against the Edict of Nikaea. Commanding a great censure host of the Space Wolves Legion and the Legio Custodes, Leman Russ is manipulated by the War Master to instead bring ruin to Prospero. The cataclysmic battle in Prospero's picturesque capital city of Tisca rents open the very stuff of space and time, driving the psychic Thousand Suns Legion nigh to extinction. At the heart of the maelstrom, Leman Russ breaks Magnus's back across his knee, but before the Crimson King can be killed, he and the remainder of his legion escape into the warp. 04 to 014 M31. The War in the Webway. Learning of Horus's treachery through sorcerous auguries and portents, Magnus attempts to warn the Emperor, projecting his etheric form into the Imperial dungeons on Terra through psychic means. Magnus the Red breaches the wards of the Emperor's great work within the Webway. This safe passage between worlds in the alternate dimensions of the Imperium is thus compromised, and the demons of the warp spill into it, leading to a desperate, decade-long struggle to protect the ingress to Terra and preserve the Emperor's grand ambitions. The Legio Custodes, Sisters of Silence, and cyborg warriors of the Mechanicum are at the forefront of the prolonged campaign within the Webway. 04 to 06 M31. The Death of Signus Prime. Considered by the War Master to present a grave threat to his plans, the Primarch Sanguinius and his Blood Angels Legion are ordered to the Signus system in the far reaches of the Eastern Imperium. There they encounter Imperial worlds known to have been teeming with life, which are instead burned black and littered with corpses. all part of a trap planned by the War Master. The primary world of Signus itself comes alive, spitting rock at the Blood Angels' fleet and causing their flagship, the Red Tear, to fall from orbit and strike the planet below. Upon Signus Prime, the Blood Angels are assailed by a horde of ferocious warp-born horrors that seek to mar the very soul of their legion. In the climactic counter-assault on the demon stronghold, the Cathedral of the Mark, Sanguinius defeats the demon prince Karbanda in single combat and breaks the influence of the warp. 0405 to 014 M31. The Martian Civil War. Kelbor Hal, the Fabricator General of Mars, aligns himself with Horus and declares Mars secession from the Imperium. Rejecting the Emperor as Omnissiah, Hal and his allies strike against the Forge Fanes of rival Magi across Mars, attempting to eradicate those still loyal to Terra within the Martian Mechanicum. In response to the initial schism, the Imperial Fists are dispatched to extract valuable personnel and resources from Mars to ensure the continued ability of the Imperium to fight back against the Traitors' rebellion. Powerful Mars is riven by a civil war fueled by cruel calculation and religious fervor that rages for the duration of the Horus Heresy, with neither side able to claim absolute victory even unto the last days of the Horus Heresy. God engines duel across the red dunes of Mars. The Imperial Fist's reconnaissance forces fight to disrupt the traitors' dark industry. 05 to 06 M31. The Betrayal at Isstvan III. Horus reveals the terrible scale of his treacherous ambition at Isstvan, where he and his brothers purge those amongst the sons of Horus, emperors of children, world-eaters, and Death Guard legions that cannot be relied upon to swear to his cause. He bombs these warriors from orbit with the dreaded Life-Eater virus, intent on scouring the surface of Isstvan III. However, his plans falter when many loyal Space Marines find shelter in Isstvan III's grand palaces and bunkers. Under the leadership of Saul Tarvitz of the Emperor's Children, the survivors of Isstvan III are organized to fight to the last in a bloody struggle against their own brothers and faithless Primarchs. More Space Marines revolt within Horus's fleet, and the frigate Eisenstein escapes to deliver word of Horus's perfidy to Terra, allowing the Loyalists to prepare for the War Master's advance. 06 to 07 M31. The Kondax Engagement. In the wake of the victory at Ulanor, the White Scars were dispatched to cleanse the Kondax system of the barbaric Xeno strain known as the Orcs, and after 5 years of prosecuting a campaign marred by misfortune, it becomes apparent that another force is fighting a shadow war against the Imperium's warriors, disrupting supplies, skirmishing with smaller battle groups, and herding the Xenos into stronger positions. In the final months of 06 M31, the mysterious agency delaying the White Scars on Kondax reveals itself to be the Alpha Legion, and for some unknown reason ceases its ongoing blockade of the White Scars' interstellar travel and communications, revealing Horus's betrayal to Jakatai Khan. After a brief but destructive conflict across the worlds of the Kondax system, the White Scars break free and cut a bloody swathe through the traitors as they return to Terra. 06 to 014 M31. The Blockade of Cthonia. Blockaded and occupied by the Imperial Fist Legion from the very onset of the rebellion, the Sons of Horus on their homeworld of Cthonia are too well entrenched in their numerous subterranean holdfasts to be conquered completely without committing significant strength desperately needed elsewhere. During the years of the Age of Darkness, the denizens of Cthonia and Sons of Horus legionaries make several failed attempts to break the blockade, until on the eve of the attack on Terra, the 16th Legion Splinter Force arrives to shatter the siege. The ensuing conflict becomes a desperate last stand for the Imperial Fists, as they battle to stop the Sons of Horus from reaping thousands of new recruits for the final assault on Terra. 06 M31. The Isstvan V drop site massacre. In response to the War Master's treachery at Isstvan III, Rogel Dawn, Praetorian of Terra, orders the Grand Retribution Fleet, comprised of the greater strength of 8 legions, to assemble in order to bring Horus to justice. 3 of these legions, the Iron Hands, Salamanders, and Raven Guard, along with their Primarchs, are the first to deploy from orbit, finding the Emperor's children fortifying Isstvan's Urgal region. Provoked by his brother Fulgrim, Ferrus Manus does not wait for reinforcements before launching a preemptive assault with his Iron Hands Legion. His brothers, Vulcan and Corax, along with their own forces, follow him into the cauldron of the Urgal Depression. After hours of grueling combat, the second wave of the Retribution Fleet lands on Isstvan V, comprising 4 more legions: the Iron Warriors, Night Lords, Word Bearers, and Alpha Legion. Unbeknownst to the embattled loyalists seeking reinforcement and reprieve, these erstwhile allies are all sworn to the traitor's cause. Suddenly surrounded by the amassed forces of traitor legions, hundreds of thousands of loyalist space marines are cut down in an act of merciless fratricide, which resounds through the ages. Ferrus Manus himself is slain by Fulgrim as the tide turns, and Fulgrim is presumed dead upon the Black Sands. Many loyalist legionaries escape to their ships, while those that cannot go to ground on Isstvan V, amongst them the Primarch Corax and the Raven Guard Legion, revert to guerrilla tactics in a bid to endure the following months of relentless depredation by the traitors. In space, most of the Salamanders and Raven Guard's fleet is destroyed or captured, though some hardy Iron Hands vessels are able to retrieve survivors and escape. This motley force of disparate provenances becomes known as the Shattered Legions, and continues to harry the advancing traitors for the duration of the Age of Darkness. 06 to 011 M31. The Paramar Secessions. The Paramar Nexus is a vital space lane linking many safe warp passages during the Great Crusade. At its heart lies Paramar V, a significant provender world of the Mechanicum, identified by the War Master as a critical pressure point on his route to Terra. The first battle for Paramar occurs in the immediate aftermath of the Isstvan massacres, when the Alpha Legion attempts to capture the Forge World swiftly through guile, subterfuge, and the rapid decapitation of its Mechanicum leadership. However, through misfortunate chance, a grand company of Iron Warriors Legion that is loyal to Terra arrives in system for resupply, throwing the Alpha Legion's plans into disarray. Only after a bloody and costly battle do the traitors claim dominion over Paramar. This is only the first of a series of battles fought during and after the Horus Heresy for control of the strategically vital Nexus. After the first battle for Paramar, the Alpha Legion all but abandons the world, allowing the Imperial Fist to make a series of rapid strikes to retake it. The Imperial host is later rebuffed by fresh traitor forces, and Paramar V changes hands several times over the following years as the White Scars Legion and Solar Auxilia becomes involved in the ongoing hostilities. During the second major battle of Paramar, in the final days of the Age of Darkness, the Sons of Horus and Wordbearer legions garrison the Forge World in significant force. In a last-ditch attempt to break the traitors' hold over the Nexus, the Blood Angels, White Scars, and a large contingent of Titan Legio conduct a series of diversionary attacks, hoping to draw forces away from Paramar V, before returning to make a decisive strike. The traitors see through this ploy, however, and prepare a huge counterattack force, though the Loyalists inflict heavy damage, rendering Paramar V a hollow prize. The vast majority of their force are surrounded and destroyed without mercy. 07 M31. The battle in the Alaxis Nebula. Their strength severely depleted following the Battle of Prospero, the Space Wolves fleet is ambushed and harried into the dangerous region of space known as the Alaxis Nebula by the Alpha Legion. Confined in the twisting channels within, the Space Wolves' rear guard is drawn into multiple engagements, only to be overwhelmed and picked apart, leaving the fleet no option but to flee further into the treacherous nebula. When the Space Wolves are seemingly cornered, Alpharius, Primarch of the Alpha Legion, makes a teleportation assault against Leman Russ upon the bridge of his ship Harfinkel. Although the sheer ferocity of the Space Wolves' defense rebuffs the attack, when all hope seems lost, the Space Wolves encounter a Dark Angel space fort at the heart of the nebula, and the combined might of the two forces is sufficient to hold the Alpha Legion at bay, forcing the 20th Legion warships to break off their pursuit. 07 M31. The ambush at Phall. Dispatched as part of the Retribution fleet to Isstvan V, the vast fleet of Imperial Fist legions is misdirected by turbulence in the warp and stranded at the Phall system. With the 7th Legion becalmed, the traitor Iron Warriors fall upon them with scant warning, and though the Lord of Iron himself commands the traitors, the Imperial Fist mount a formidable defense. Dozens of capital ships are lost on both sides, and boarding torpedoes and ordnance fill the void as the fleets duel. Hundreds of individual Zones Mortalis actions take place as ships launch or repel boarders, and even the Iron Blood, Perturabo's flagship, is boarded. At the cusp of the Imperial Fist victory, the warp storms abate, and a command for Rogel Dawn, Primarch of the Imperial Fist, reaches his sons, recalling the fleet to Terra, duty-bound. The Imperial Fists have no choice but to withdraw, even though victory was within their grasp. 07 to 08 M31. The Shadow Crusade. Motivated by cruelty, malice, and a long-standing vendetta against the Ultramarines, the Primarch Angron and Lorgar lead their legions in a crusade of extermination across the realm of Ultramar. Burning every world their combined fleet encounters, their crusade is aimed at crippling the Ultramarines' legion by devastating their vital recruiting worlds, Forge World, and sources of provender. Still reeling from the betrayal at Calth, the Ultramarines are too scattered to respond effectively to the onslaught until Rabute Gilliman confronts his brothers at Nuceria, halting the butchery. During the encounter, dark powers possess Angron, and he succumbs to his own unbridled rage, ascending to become a demonic avatar of war and carnage. 07 M31. The Betrayal at Calth. The Ultramarines Legion is called to muster on the planet of Calth, otherwise known as the Jewel of Ultramar, alongside the Wordbearers Legion. As the two forces gather in orbit, a captured void ship, the Companion, suicidally accelerates to strike Calth's orbit docks at near light speed, in an act of treachery on a horrific scale. On the mustering grounds, the aghast Ultramarines are fired upon and butchered by the Wordbearers and their cultist allies. Even as destroyed starships fall from the sky, compounding matters, a corrupting scrap code is insinuated into Calth's datasphere, making it impossible for the Ultramarines to coordinate a resistance, and it is even briefly thought that their Primarch, Beta Garmon, is lost. Recovering from the initial shock of betrayal, the Ultramarines mount a brave, if doomed, resistance against the traitors. While they fight to preserve Calth, the Wordbearers set in motion plans which led to the death of the system's star, bathing the planet in deadly radiation and forcing the fighting underground. The sacrifice of Calth is an act of terrible ritual significance, calling forth the galaxy-wide turmoil in the warp that becomes known as the Ruinstorm. 07 to 011 M31. The Ruinstorm. The Ruinstorm is a truly vast warp storm which inhabits space travel and communication across the floundering Imperium. Blocking even the light of the Emperor's Astronomicon, only the traitor forces and their ruinous allies have the means to pass safely through this interdimensional malaise. The darkness of the Ruinstorm occludes much of the galaxy, but in particular presents a barrier isolating the Eastern Imperium from Terra, stranding the major strength of 3 loyal legions far from the throne world, and paving the way for Horus's advance. In legions, the Blood Angels, Dark Angels, and Ultramarines at Davin, which leads the Ruinstorm dissipating and allows loyalist forces to fight back across the Imperium. 07 to 014 M31. The Solar War. In the wake of their successes at Isstvan, traitor armies march across the northern expanse of the galaxy, carving out a dark empire in the Warmaster's name. Thousands of refugee ships flee ahead of the advance, and under the cover of these flotillas, traitor soldiers and ships strike at loyalists within the light of Sol, across the Segmentum Solar, and especially within the Sol system itself. The Imperial Fist Legion and its allies erect defenses and deploy fleets against the incessant enemy incursions. The Alpha Legion is amongst the key instigators of such attacks, the 20th's own fleet coming within striking distance of Terra at the Battle of Pluto, where their Primarch Alpharius is slain by Rogel Dawn, Primarch of the Imperial Fists. The attacks do not falter, proving true the adage that should you cut one of the heads from the Hydra, 2 more will rise to take its place. 07 to 010 M31. The Thramas Crusade. The murderous Night Lords Legion are responsible for subjugating vast swathes of space on the eastern fringe of the Imperium in a reign of terror intended to divert loyalist forces from Terra, and secure several Forge Worlds for the Warmaster's cause. Drawn by the word of senseless atrocities being perpetrated, the vengeful Dark Angels Legion returns to Thramas from the distant Shield Worlds to bring the Night Lords to justice. The conflict which follows lays waste to many of the Imperium's territories. The Thramas Crusade spans across hundreds of worlds in 4 inhabited sectors and even reaches into the outer void beyond the Imperium's edge. Both embroiled legions are willing to go to any length to bring the other's work to ruin, burning worlds if they cannot be taken, and only after years of fighting do the Dark Angels force a final, decisive victory. The Thramas Crusade ends disastrously for the Night Lords at the world of Sheol 9, with their Primarch Conrad Kurz and many of the Legion's senior officers presumed captured. Divorced of any leadership capable of binding the Legion to a single purpose, it breaks into dozens of splinter warbands, which scatter to every corner of the galaxy. 08 M31. The capture of the Perfect Fortress. Created by the combined genius of the Primarchs Perturabo and Fulgrim, the Perfect Fortress on the planet Narcissus is designed to be as impregnable as it is beautiful. occupied by the Emperor's Children Legion after the outbreak of the Horus Heresy, the perfect fortress comes under futile attack from the Therian cohort regiment of the Imperial Army. Taking heavy casualties, the Therians break and flee from the battle, only to be run down and butchered by the arrogant Emperor's Children. As the Emperor's Children forces leave the fortress in pursuit, however, they realize that the attack was a ruse meant to draw them out, and they are in turn slaughtered by the Raven Guard Legion, who capture the now unoccupied perfect fortress and turn its guns on its erstwhile defenders. 08 to 013 M31 The Siege of Baal. Baal, homeworld of the Blood Angels Legion, becomes a sanctuary for Space Marines fleeing Horus's rebellion, including both elements of the shattered legions of Isstvan and loyal sons of traitor Primarchs who cast off their legion identity to become so-called Black Shields. The gathering of Legiones Astartes becomes so great that it poses a major threat to the rear of the traitors' advance on Terra. And so Baal is besieged, and its moons, outlying garrisons and space installations are seized by traitor forces. Over the course of the siege, two major attempts are made to conquer Baal itself, by subterfuge and by force, involving the Sons of Horus, Emperor's Children, and the Dark Mechanicum, though both are rebuffled with a bloody butcher's bill. 08 to 09 The Vanaheim Space Drop. The Iron Warriors launch a daring void assault against the orbital hives of Vanaheim, capturing the vital facilities from the Mechanicum after 10 days of brutal fighting. The Space Force Legion and elements of several Loyalist forces are drawn into the conflict, launching 3 successive counter-assaults in order to recapture the orbital hive station's controlling grid. But each fails to achieve its goal. Countless thousands of lives are lost in the battle, with boarding torpedoes and drop pods falling like hail upon the orbital hives, while dueling combat aircraft darts between the sheeting steel rain. 09 M31 Onwards, the breaking of Anvils. The mighty forge worlds of Anvils, which between them command sufficient production capacity to alter the course of the Horus Heresy, erupt into a fratricidal war of mutual eradication. The open moments of this civil war see 4 entire forge fanes sterilized by exotic and forbidden biophages and millions of blank-faced cyborgs broken upon the anvils of war. The Magi Lords of Anvils reject offers of alliance and aid from both the War Masters and Emperor's emissaries, destroying any who attempt to intervene. The sheer ferocity of the conflict, which consumes all of Anvil's domains, is such that it is impossible for any outsider to determine what cause the opposing factions stand for, or even what they are warring over. 09 to 013 M31 The Siege of Inwit. Hungry for the prize of the Imperial Fist Legion's homeworld, dozens of lesser traitor fleets attack the Empire of Inwit over the course of the Age of Darkness. These initial skirmishes build to a grand crescendo, culminating in a vast fleet of traitors laying siege to Inwit. Daring Loyalist forces run the blockade, attempting to support Inwit, and battles break out in space and across half a dozen worlds in the Inwit cluster. The Imperial Fist garrison desperately attempts to keep space lanes open to supply Terra, ceding worlds to the traitors as they fall back to an ever-tightening defensive line. The assault continues to build until the War Master tips the balance of the solar war in the traitors' favor and abandons the burning Inwit cluster to strike at Terra itself. 09 M31 The Doom of Malik. The traitor hosts marching on Terra reach the night world of Moloch, the scene of a great victory during the Great Crusade, and heavily garrisoned since, for reasons known originally only to the Emperor himself and latterly discovered by the War Master. The traitors commit an enormous invasion force, including the bulk of the Sons of Horus and Death Guard legions, as well as 4 Titan legios, with which they make war against hundreds of thousands of Imperial soldiers and several Knight houses. At a critical moment during the carnage, the Knight household, House Divine, reveals its allegiance to the Warmaster, turning the tide against the Loyalist defenders and bringing doom to Moloch. 010 to 012, M31. The death of Tallarn. The defenders of Tallarn, a staging planet for the Imperial Army during the Great Crusade, are taken by surprise when Perturabo, Primarch of the Iron Warriors Legion, orders the death of the world by deadly Vival barrage. Though most of the denizens of Tallarn are killed within minutes, many defenders survive thanks to a planet-wide network of subterranean shelters and deep storage facilities. When the survivors emerge, they find the surface of their once verdant world transformed into a wasteland mired with a fog of deadly toxins and coated in the thick sludge of decomposition. Under cover of this miasma, the Iron Warriors and their Alpha Legion allies mount a full-scale invasion. The Loyalist defenders of Tallarn fight hard to broadcast a distress call and promise vengeance against the traitors. In answer, dozens of Loyalist fleets adrift in the Segmentum Tempestus, including elements of the Dark Angels, Imperial Fists, Iron Hands, and White Scars legions, as well as Titan Legios, Knight Houses, and rogue traitors militant, are drawn into the rapidly escalating maelstrom of the war in orbit, on the surface and within the underground bunkers of Tallarn. The very air of Tallarn is poison, and so both forces must utilize sealed battle tanks and other engines of war. The ensuing Battle of Tallarn is considered to be the largest armored engagement in the known history of mankind, and while it is declared a victory by the Loyalists, millions of warriors and war machines on both sides are left scattered across the lifeless, deadly surface of the planet. 010 M31 onwards. The Cataclysm of Iron. Across the Segmentum Tempestus and Pacificus in the galactic southwest lies a region of space named the Belt of Iron, for its superabundant concentration of Forge Worlds. After the secession of Mars from the Imperium, these Forge Worlds enter a crisis of faith over the matter of the Emperor's legitimacy as their Omnissiah. Almost all of the Forge Worlds in the Belt of Iron erupt into civil war, and none are spared from some form of religious conflict. The outcomes of these schisms are multitudinous. Dozens of Forge Worlds cleave to their oaths of loyalty to the Imperium, while almost as many again subscribe to the poisonous ideologies of the Dark Imperium and accept the offers of the Warmaster. Certain Forge Worlds, such as Lux Incunabula, are fierce promulgators of the ideals of the Ordo Castropathica and seek freedom of innovation, declaring independence from both the Imperium and the Warmaster, inciting several others to reject outside authority outright. Others still, such as the Arachnis, become locked in a death spiral of civil war, unable to reach a state of consensus. By 010 M31, the heightening tensions of strife between these worlds boil over into a full-scale interstellar war, pitching the might of loyalist Forge Worlds against traitor and independent worlds alike. Many dozens of Forge Worlds are riven by war or destroyed outright as their Tagmata armies and legions of Titans and Knights are thrown against one another in protracted warfare. Innumerable other Imperial systems are drawn into the conflict, either as proxy war zones or as the battlegrounds over which soulless automata duel. At the height of the conflict, the Dark Angels Legion intervenes to fire world-ending warheads indiscriminately upon the Forge Worlds involved in the Great Cataclysm, and yet the battle continues to rage far beyond the Horus Heresy. 010 to 013, M31, the Beta Garmon campaign. Located at the center of the network of stable space lanes, which include the vital systems of Paramar and Lauren Alpha, the Beta Garmon systems becomes the pivot point upon which the course of Horus's entire campaign hinges. Captured early in the Age of Darkness by elements of all but destroyed Salamander's Legion at the Battle of Nikron, Beta Garmon is a relentlessly contested region which the traitors cannot afford to abandon if they wish to approach Terra en masse, and still retain the ability to supply their armies with the ill-begotten gains of the War Master's Dark Empire. For reasons barely understood by the Loyalist defenders, the Ruinstorm that occludes the warp begins to abate across vast swathes of the galaxy, allowing Rogel Dawn, the Praetorian of Terra, through the potent astropathic relay at Beta Garmon, to contact and recall formerly lost or stranded forces from across the war-torn reaches of the Northern Imperium. This grand Imperial muster at Beta Garmon rapidly escalates into the largest gathering of Loyalist might since the earliest years of the war. A concentration force so impressive that the traitors have no choice but to respond in kind. The resulting clash in arms is monumental in scale. Billions of the Imperium soldiers perish in an event that becomes known as the Great Slaughter. Thousands of God engines are also unleashed to combat one another. This Titan death extinguishes much of the proud lineage of the Collegia Titanica in one brief, brutal campaign. In addition, the largest fleet engagement of the Horus Heresy is fought across the region. This sea of fire lights the conflict raging on the ground in constant, false daylight and creates a seething false nebula of burning void ships. By the end of the Beta Garmon campaign, both sides are so thoroughly bled that their only remaining option for ultimate victory is to force a final, decisive confrontation, the Siege of Terra. Although Horus's elite legions push on when the tide of war swings in their favor, the Great Slaughter continues in their wake. 11 to 013, M31, the Lauren Alpha campaign. The White Scars and the Emperor's Children legions duel at speed across the lush world of Lauren Alpha, the last critical bottleneck and point of defense on the stable space lanes dividing Terra and the galactic north. With the escalation of the Solar War, elements of the Imperial Fist legions and newly formed Adeptus Mechanicus move to bolster the defenses, pushing the Emperor's Children back. However, as the dam at Beta Garmon begins to break, a massive Dark Mechanicum force invades Lauren Alpha, forcing the White Scars to go to ground in the trench networks. Out of their element, the White Scars buckle under the overwhelming Skitaris assault. And when the tide turns completely in the traitors' favor with the arrival of the Sons of Horus Legion, the Loyalists are forced to fall back towards Terra. 012 to 013, M31, the Passage of the Angel of Death. The Dark Angels Legion, long isolated in the eastern fringe, is loosed to wreak havoc when the Ruinstorm abates. When Lionel Johnson, Primarch of the Dark Angels, learns of the true extent of the crimes perpetrated by his traitorous brothers, he unleashes his rage and the full might of his legion in a campaign of retribution against Horus's compatriots, leaving a blackened trail of scorched world across the southern Imperium. Included in these terrible tally of worlds brought to ruin by the bombardment of Dark Angels are Chemos, home of the Emperor's Children Legion, and Barbarous, home of the Death Guard Legion. 012, M31, the Wolf Cull. After engaging in an ill-counseled assassination attempt against Horus Lupercal, the scattered remnants of the Space Wolves Legion and their Primarch, Leman Russ, are pursued to the Yarran system, where they make a desperate last stand against a host of traitors. There, it is as if every brother legion with which the Space Wolves had had conflict over the years is waiting for their downfall. Elements of the Alpha Legion, Sons of Horus, World Eaters, and Thousand Suns legions inflict heavy casualties upon the Sons of Russ, pressing them unto extinction. Only the unexpected intervention of the Raven Guard and their Primarch Corvus Corax buys the Space Wolves the reprieve they require to regroup and carry their wounded Primarch to safety. In prosecuting the doomed attempt on the War Master's life, and in suffering such dire losses as a result, the 6th Legion are rendered unable to defend the walls of Terra. 013 to 014, M31, the Serpent's Coil. Defying the War Master's orders, The Alpha Legion abandons the grand muster of traitors to instead hinder the advance of any loyalists approaching from the Eastern Imperium, seeking out ultramarine vessels in particular. The Alpha Legion repeatedly appears in overwhelming numbers to forcibly redirect loyalist ships into perilous warp translations, all the while avoiding being drawn into open conflict. The battle fleet of Beta Garmon, Primarch of the Ultramarines Legion, is forced to intercede to allow supporting loyalist forces to advance, and in doing so is further delayed from intervening at the Siege of Terra. 014 M31 The Siege of Terra. The amassed traitor fleet commanded by the War Master Horus breaks through the Sol System's defenses meticulously laid by the Primarch Rogel Dawn, smashes Battlefleet Solar with overwhelming numbers, and takes Luna to at last reach the orbit of the Throne World. On the 13th of Secundus, 014 M31, the bombardment of Terra begins. This has been Pivotal Moments of the Horus Heresy, read from Warhammer, the Horus Heresy, Age of Darkness rulebook. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this wasn't too boring. I know my voice sounds incredibly boring, but I hope that in reading directly from the books themselves, I provide some form of information that either others may not, or I can do so in a way that benefits you. So thank you, and I hope this will be the first of a long line of videos I make. So, with that said, good night.